Bloodbound 2, Shadows Echo, ancient demons hunt their lost power. 3 months had passed since I destroyed House Vyrx, yet their shadow still haunted Ravencourt. The rifts I'd sealed kept tearing open like infected wounds that refused to heal. Each morning brought new reports, livestock drained of blood in the outer districts, merchants vanishing on roads that had been safe for centuries, children speaking in tongues they'd never learned. I stood on the balcony of Cassius's estate, watching smoke rise from the latest incident. A rift had opened in the market square at dawn, disgorging creatures that looked like living shadows with too many teeth. The city guard had contained it barely, but not before 7 people disappeared into that writhing darkness. "It's getting worse," Cassius said, joining me with a steaming cup of tea that I ignored. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He'd been spending his nights poring over ancient texts, searching for answers neither of us wanted to find. "They hunger," Bloodwhisper whispered in my mind, its voice carrying an odd note of satisfaction, as do I. I pressed my palm against the sword's hilt, feeling its pulse synchronize with my heartbeat. Our bond had deepened since the night I'd mastered it, but mastery was perhaps too strong a word. We were partners now, yes, but partners with very different appetites. "Show me what you found," I said to Cassius, following him back into his study. The room had been transformed into something resembling a war council chamber. Maps covered every surface, marked with red ink where rifts had appeared. Books lay open, their pages weighted down with stones, passages highlighted in frantic scrawl. But it was the newest edition that made my blood run cold, a massive tome bound in what looked disturbingly like human skin. "I acquired this from a private collector," Cassius said, his voice carefully neutral. "It cost me a fortune and 3 favors I'd rather not discuss." The book fell open to an illustration that made Bloodwhisper hiss in my mind. A figure wreathed in shadow stood over a forge, its hands shaping molten metal while smaller beings, demons, I realized fed the flames with their own essence. "Bloodwhisper isn't just a corrupted weapon," Cassius continued, his finger tracing the ancient text. "It's a tether, a connection between our world and something that was bound centuries ago." I leaned closer, squinting at the archaic script. Bound by whom? My ancestors, among others. The Mage Wars weren't just about territory or power, they were about preventing something catastrophic from breaking through. He turned the page, revealing more illustrations. Armies of shadow creatures pouring through massive rifts. Cities consumed by darkness. And at the center of it all, a figure of terrible beauty and malevolence. "Malakor," I read aloud, the name feeling like poison on my tongue. Bloodwhisper's reaction was immediate and violent. Pain shot through my skull as the sword's consciousness recoiled, then surged forward with desperate hunger. "Master," it whispered, and for the first time since our partnership began, I heard longing in its voice. "He calls to us." "No," I said firmly, both to the sword and to the growing dread in my chest. "We've been through this." But even as I spoke, I felt something else, a presence at the edge of my awareness, vast and patient and utterly alien. It had been there for weeks, I realized, growing stronger each time I used Bloodwhisper's power. Cassius was watching me with concern. "Lira, what is it?" Before I could answer, the windows exploded inward. The creature that flowed through the shattered glass was unlike anything I'd seen emerge from the rifts before. Where the others had been mindless shadows driven by hunger, this one moved with purpose. Intelligence gleamed in its multiple eyes as it oriented on me, or rather, on the sword at my side. "Wielder," it spoke, its voice like grinding stone, "you carry what is not yours." Bloodwhisper sang as it leaped into my hand, eager for battle, but something was different. The sword felt heavier, its crimson glow pulsing in rhythm with the creature's movements. "Kin," Bloodwhisper whispered, and I felt its confusion mirror my own. The shadow thing lunged, moving faster than should have been possible. I barely got the blade up in time to block its claws that sparked against Bloodwhisper's edge instead of passing through like smoke. "It's solid," I gasped, dancing backward as the creature pressed its attack. "Not just solid," Cassius called out, pulling books and artifacts away from the spreading fight. "Intelligent, focused." The creature spoke again as we circled each other. "The bound one stirs. The tether calls to him. You will return what was stolen or be consumed in the reclaiming." I feinted left, then spun right, Bloodwhisper carving a deep gash across the thing's torso. Black ichor sprayed across Cassius's precious books, and the sword drank deeply. But instead of weakening, the creature seemed to grow stronger. Its wound sealed itself, and its eyes blazed brighter. It feeds on the same source, Bloodwhisper realized. We are connected. Connected how? I demanded, both of the sword and the creature. My answer came in the form of shared memory, not mine, not even Bloodwhisper's, but something older and infinitely more malevolent. I saw the forging again, but from a different perspective. The smith wasn't creating a weapon, he was creating a prison, a way to contain something too powerful to destroy. And I was the key. The creature struck while I was reeling from the vision, its claws raking across my ribs. Pain flared, but it was nothing compared to the agony of understanding. Cassius, I gasped, pressing my free hand to the bleeding wounds. The book, find the binding ritual, now. He didn't question, just started frantically flipping pages while I kept the creature at bay. But it wasn't trying to kill me anymore, it was hurting me, driving me toward the balcony. The bound one has been patient, it said, its voice taking on an almost hypnotic quality. But patience has limits. Come willingly and your death will be swift. Counteroffer? I snarled, channeling power through Bloodwhisper until the blade blazed like a crimson star. Go back to whatever hole you crawled out of, and I won't send you there in pieces. The creature laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You do not understand. We are not your enemy, wielder. We are your destiny. It lunged again, but this time I was ready. Bloodwhisper met its charge with a sweep that should have taken its head clean off. Instead, the blade passed through empty air as the creature dissolved into shadow. Behind you, Cassius shouted. I spun, but too late. The creature reformed, solid again, its claws inches from my throat. Then Cassius was there, pressing something cold and metallic against the thing's back. Light erupted from whatever he held, not the warm glow of fire, but the harsh, clean radiance of pure silver. The creature shrieked and dissolved, this time not reforming. Bless silver, Cassius explained, holding up an ornate cross. My grandfather's, he used it during the last of the Mage Wars. I slumped against the wall, suddenly exhausted. The wounds on my ribs were already healing, another gift from Bloodwhisper, but the memory the creature had shared lingered like a poison in my mind. We can't stay here, I said. That thing was just a scout. There will be others. I know. Cassius was already moving, gathering books and artifacts into a travel pack. I found what we need. There's a place, the Brightblade Sanctum, hidden in the Thornwood north of the city. If the binding ritual can be reinforced, that's where we'll find the knowledge. The Sanctum, Bloodwhisper mused. Yes, I remember that place, where they tried to unmake me. Tried and failed, apparently, I muttered. Perhaps they succeeded more than they knew. Before I could ask what that meant, more windows shattered throughout the house. Not just one creature this time, dozens of them, all flowing toward us with single-minded purpose. Time to go, I said, grabbing Cassius's arm. We ran. The Thornwood had earned its name honestly. Ancient trees twisted skyward like arthritic fingers, their branches so thick they blocked out most of the sun. What light did filter through was green and sickly, giving the entire forest an underwater quality that made my skin crawl. We'd been traveling for 3 days, following paths that Cassius claimed to remember from childhood visits to the Sanctum. I wasn't entirely convinced he knew where we were going, but anywhere was better than Ravencourt. The city had been under siege since our escape, not by armies, but by shadows that struck without warning and vanished just as quickly. They're following us, Bloodwhisper observed as we made camp for the 3rd night. I didn't need the sword to tell me that. I could feel them at the edge of my awareness, a constant pressure like an approaching storm. The creatures from the Shadow Realm weren't just hunting us, they were herding us, driving us deeper into the forest. Why haven't they attacked? I asked Cassius as he built a small fire with hands that shook only slightly. Maybe they want us to reach the Sanctum, he replied, not meeting my eyes. The possibility had occurred to me too. What if this was all part of some larger plan? What if we were walking into a trap? Does it matter? Bloodwhisper asked. We cannot go back, we can only go forward. The sword was right, as usual. but its voice had been changing over the past few days, becoming more complex. Sometimes I caught hints of other personalities in its mental tone, as if it were remembering things that had happened to previous wielders. "Tell me about the others," I said quietly. "Others? The ones who carried you before me. What happened to them?" Bloodwhisper was silent for so long I thought it wouldn't answer. When it finally spoke, its voice was heavy with something that might have been regret. "They were consumed, not by me, by him. Each wielder brought me closer to the bound one, strengthened the connection, until..." "Until what?" "Until you are different, Lira Shadowhand. You do not simply wield me, you commune with me. The others sought to dominate or be dominated. You seek partnership. And that makes me special. It makes you dangerous, to him." I was about to ask what that meant when Cassius suddenly stood, his hand moving to the silver cross at his belt. "We're not alone," he whispered. They emerged from the shadows between the trees, not the creatures from the shadow realm, but humans, or what had once been humans. Their eyes glowed with the same sickly light I'd seen in the rifts, and when they moved, it was with the jerky, unnatural gait of marionettes. "House Vyrks," I breathed, recognizing the tattered remains of their ceremonial robes. The leader stepped forward, and I saw with a shock that it was Magister Vyrks herself, or what remained of her. Her throat still bore the wound where Bloodwhisper had pierced it, but the flesh around it had turned black and seemed to writhe with a life of its own. "You killed me," she said, her voice echoing strangely in the forest quiet. "But death is not the end for those who serve the bound one." "Revenants," Bloodwhisper hissed, "sustained by his power. They will not rest until we are destroyed." "What do you want?" I demanded, though I already knew the answer. "What was promised to us," Vyrks replied. "The power to reshape this world. You stole that from us, thief, but the bound one is merciful. Surrender the blade, and your death will be clean." I laughed, surprising myself with how genuine it sounded. "You know, I'm getting really tired of people telling me to give up my sword." Bloodwhisper flared to life in my hand, its crimson glow pushing back the shadows. But something was wrong. The blade felt sluggish, its usual eager hunger replaced by something like reluctance. "They are already dead," it explained. "Their essence belongs to him now. If I consume them, I consume part of him. And that's bad because it would strengthen the connection, bring him closer to breaking free." The revenants were advancing, moving to surround us. Cassius had his silver cross ready, but I could see the fear in his eyes. These weren't mindless shadow creatures. They were intelligent, organized, and they knew exactly how to counter our defenses. "Then we don't kill them," I decided. "We run." "Running is not in my nature," Bloodwhisper protested. "Then it's a good thing you're not in charge." I grabbed Cassius's arm and bolted deeper into the forest, leaving the fire and our supplies behind. The revenants gave chase immediately, their inhuman shrieks echoing through the trees. We ran through the night, guided only by moonlight and Cassius's increasingly uncertain directions. Behind us, the sounds of pursuit never faded. If anything, they seemed to be getting closer. "There," Cassius gasped, pointing ahead. Through the trees, I could see it, a structure of white stone that seemed to glow with its own inner light. The Brightblade Sanctum, hidden for centuries in the heart of the thornwood. We stumbled through the entrance just as the first revenant burst from the tree line behind us. Ancient wards flared to life, creating a barrier of silver light that the undead creatures couldn't cross. For the moment, we were safe. The Brightblade Sanctum was not what I'd expected. Instead of a grand temple or fortress, it was a simple stone building with clean lines and minimal decoration. But the moment I stepped inside, I could feel the power thrumming through the walls, not the chaotic energy of the rifts, but something ordered and purposeful. "Welcome, descendant." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing through the chamber without any visible source. Cassius straightened, his expression shifting to something like reverence. "Guardian," he said formally, "I seek the knowledge of my ancestors." "And you bring the tether with you." The voice seemed to focus on me, and I felt an invisible presence examining me with uncomfortable intensity. "Interesting. She is not what we expected." "Be wary," Bloodwhisper warned. "This place. I remember pain here." A figure materialized in the center of the chamber, not solid, but a projection of light and memory. It was an old man in robes similar to those Cassius wore, but his eyes held depths that spoke of centuries of accumulated wisdom. "I am Alaric Brightblade," the figure said, "the last guardian of this place and the fool who forged the weapon you carry." I felt Bloodwhisper's recognition like a physical blow. "Father," it whispered, and for the first time since our partnership began, I heard genuine emotion in its voice. "You're dead," I said bluntly. Alaric smiled sadly. "In body, yes, but I bound my essence to this place when I realized what I had created. Someone needed to remain, to guard the knowledge of how to contain Malakor should he ever stir again." "He's stirring now," Cassius said. "The rifts, the creatures." "I know," Alaric's expression darkened. "I have felt his influence growing stronger. The tether was meant to be a prison, but it has become a lifeline. Each time it feeds, each time it grows in power, it strengthens his connection to this realm." I looked down at Bloodwhisper, seeing it with new eyes. "You're not just a weapon, you're a piece of him." "Not a piece," the sword corrected. "A reflection. A shadow cast by his essence when he was bound, but shadows can become real given enough substance." "Which is why you hunger," I realized. "You're trying to become real, to exist independently of him." "Yes, but the more I consume, the more I risk awakening him fully." Alaric nodded approvingly. "You understand the dilemma. The sword needs power to maintain its independence, but that same power calls to its creator. It is a balance that cannot be maintained indefinitely." "So what's the solution?" I demanded. "How do we break the connection?" The Guardian's form flickered, as if the question itself was draining his strength. "There are 3 paths. The first is to destroy the tether entirely, but that would release all the power it contains at once, likely tearing a permanent rift between realms." I felt Bloodwhisper's fear at that possibility. "I do not wish to die," it admitted. "The second path is to strengthen Malakor's prison, using the tether as an anchor. But that would require a willing sacrifice, someone to take my place as guardian, binding their essence to the containment." Cassius paled. "You mean?" "Death, yes, but not meaningless death. A death with purpose, to protect both realms from Malakor's influence." "And the third path?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. Alaric's smile was grim. "The most dangerous of all. To sever the connection by confronting Malakor directly in the space between realms where he is bound. To force him to release his claim on the tether through strength of will alone." "That is madness," Bloodwhisper said. "He is a demon prince. His power dwarfs anything we could bring to bear." "Perhaps," Alaric agreed, "but you are not the same weapon I forged centuries ago. You have grown, evolved, become something new through your bond with her. And she—" He looked at me with something like pride. "She is not like the others who have carried you. She does not seek to dominate or be dominated. She seeks partnership." "What does that mean exactly?" I asked. "It means you might be the key to Malakor's defeat, or his ultimate victory." Before I could ask for clarification, the sanctum shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the silver barriers at the entrance flickered. "They're breaking through," Cassius said, his face pale. But it wasn't the revenants. Through the walls, I could see a massive shadow rising above the forest, not a creature, but a presence so vast it blotted out the stars. When it spoke, its voice shook the very foundations of the sanctum. "Enough." The shadow coalesced into a form that hurt to look at, directly humanoid but wrong, as if someone had tried to sculpt a person from living darkness and failed to understand the fundamental nature of flesh and bone. When it moved, reality seemed to bend around it, and I could taste copper and sulfur on the air. "Malakor," Alaric breathed, his projection flickering with fear. "Not Malakor," the thing corrected, its voice like the grinding of tectonic plates. "Merely his will, given form, his avatar in this diminished realm." The silver barriers of the sanctum held, but I could see cracks spreading through them like spider webs. Whatever this thing was, it was far more powerful than the creatures we'd faced before. "You have something that belongs to me," the avatar continued, its attention focusing on me with crushing intensity. "Return it, and I will make your death swift." "Do not listen," Bloodwhisper urged. "He lies, he has always lied." "The sword speaks truth, for once," Alaric said. Malakor's nature is deception. He will promise anything to reclaim what he has lost. The avatar laughed, a sound like breaking glass and screaming wind. Lost? I have lost nothing. The tether was always mine, as was the power it contains. The girl is merely a temporary inconvenience. Then why haven't you taken it back? I challenged, surprised by my own boldness. Because she amuses me. The avatar's form shifted, becoming more human, more beautiful. For a moment, I saw what Malakor might have looked like before his binding, tall and elegant, with features that spoke of nobility and power. You are different from the others, Lira Shadowhand. They sought to use the tether's power for their own ends. You seek to understand it. He is trying to seduce you, Bloodwhisper warned, as he seduced the first wielders. But there was something in the avatar's words that rang true. I had been trying to understand Bloodwhisper, to work with it rather than simply commanding it. And that partnership had made us both stronger. What do you want from me? I asked. What I have always wanted. Freedom. The avatar gestured, and images filled the air around us, visions of a world transformed, where the barriers between realms had fallen and magic flowed freely. I was bound not because I was evil, but because I was different. The mages of old feared change, feared growth. They preferred their small, limited world to the infinite possibilities I offered. You offered slavery, Alaric interjected, domination. I offered evolution. The avatar's beautiful face twisted with anger. But they were too small-minded to see it. They bound me, trapped me in a prison of their own making. But the tether remembers. It carries a fragment of my true nature, and through it, I can offer you the same gift. I felt the temptation like a physical force. Power beyond imagining. The ability to reshape the world according to my will. No more hunger, no more fear, no more watching innocent people suffer while I struggled to protect them. Lira, Bloodwhisper's voice was urgent. Remember who you are, remember what you chose. I chose partnership, I said aloud, as much to myself as to the avatar, not domination. Partnership, the avatar laughed again. With a fragment of my own essence. Child, you are in partnership with me whether you acknowledge it or not. Every time you draw the blade, every time you taste its power, you come closer to understanding the truth. The silver barriers cracked further, and I could see the revenants pressing against them from outside. We were trapped between two forces, Malakor's avatar within and his servants without. Choose, the avatar said, extending one perfect hand. Join me willingly, and I will spare your companions. Refuse, and watch them die slowly while I take what is mine by force. I looked at Cassius, saw the fear in his eyes mixed with something else, trust. He believed I would make the right choice, even if he wasn't sure what that choice should be. What do you think? I asked Bloodwhisper silently. I think, the sword replied, that we have learned something he has not. Which is? That true power comes not from domination, but from willing sacrifice. I understood. Drawing Bloodwhisper, I felt its familiar weight in my hand, but also something new, a sense of completeness, as if the sword and I were becoming something greater than the sum of our parts. I have a counteroffer, I told the avatar. Its perfect features twisted with curiosity. Oh. Fight me, here now. If you win, you can have the sword and everything that comes with it. If I win, you release your claim on it forever. The avatar's laughter shook the sanctum. You would challenge me, a mortal girl with a fragment of my own power. Not just me, I said, raising Bloodwhisper until its crimson light blazed like a star. Us. The sword's consciousness merged with mine more completely than ever before. I felt its memories, its pain, its desperate desire for independence. And it felt mine, my determination, my refusal to be controlled, my absolute commitment to protecting those I cared about. We are not your fragment, I said, my voice harmonizing with Bloodwhisper's mental tone. We are something new, something you could never create because you don't understand what we've learned. And what is that? The avatar asked, its form beginning to shift back toward shadow and menace. That real strength comes from choosing to be vulnerable, from trusting someone else with your weaknesses, from partnership instead of domination. The avatar struck without warning, moving faster than thought. But Bloodwhisper and I moved as one, the blade intercepting claws that could have torn through steel. Where they met, reality sparked and twisted. Impossible, the avatar hissed. "You are using my own power against me." "No," I replied, pressing the attack. "We're using our power, the power we created together." The battle was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. We fought not just with blade and claw, but with will and essence, each strike carrying the weight of our respective natures. The avatar was stronger, older, more experienced but Bloodwhisper, and I fought with a unity it couldn't match. Now the sword whispered. I understood. Dropping my guard, I let the avatar's next strike pierce my chest, its claws sinking deep into my heart. But as it touched me, Bloodwhisper struck not at the avatar's form, but at the connection between it and its master. The avatar screamed as the link was severed, its form beginning to dissolve. "This is not possible. I am eternal. I am." "Alone," I finished, pulling the claws from my chest. The wound was already healing, Bloodwhisper's power flowing through me. "And that's why you'll never understand what we've become." The avatar's form collapsed into shadow, then faded entirely. The silver barriers of the sanctum flared bright, and I heard the revenants outside shriek as they were consumed by holy light. "It is done," Alaric said, his projection solidifying slightly. "The connection is severed. Malakor's influence in this realm is broken." I slumped against the wall, suddenly exhausted. "Is it over?" Alaric's expression was grave. "This battle is over, but Malakor himself remains bound in the space between realms, and now that his avatar has been destroyed, he will be desperate. Desperate enough to risk everything on one final gambit. He will try to break free entirely," Bloodwhisper agreed. "To tear open the barriers between worlds." "Then we stop him," I said simply. "We?" Cassius looked at me with concern. "Lira, you nearly died just fighting his avatar, Malakor himself." "Is still bound by the same prison that created Bloodwhisper," I interrupted. "Which means there's still a connection, still a way to reach him." Alaric nodded slowly. "The nexus, the point where all realms converge. It exists in the space between spaces, accessible only to those who carry a piece of the binding itself." "The sword," I realized. "The sword," he confirmed. "But the journey will change you both. You may not return as the same beings who depart." I looked down at Bloodwhisper, feeling its presence in my mind like a warm ember. "Are you ready for this?" "I have been ready since the moment I chose you over him," it replied. "The question is, are you ready to see this through to the end?" I thought of Ravencourt, of the innocent people who would suffer if Malakor broke free. I thought of Cassius, who had risked everything to help me understand what I carried. I thought of all the wielders who had come before, consumed by the very power they sought to control. "I'm ready," I said. But as we prepared for the final confrontation, Bloodwhisper shared one last, chilling truth. "He does not simply want the sword back, Lira. He wants you. Your will, your essence, your capacity for partnership. He believes that with you as his vessel, he can become something greater than he ever was alone." The real battle, I realized, wasn't going to be for the sword at all. It was going to be for my soul. Thank you for listening.